Thank you very much. So thank you very much for coming. My name is Antonia Bollingbrook-Kent, and I'm going to talk to you this evening about a mountainous region that I'm guessing not that many of you have heard of or been to. And it's here. Does the clicker work? Indeed. Does the laser work? Oh, should have known. Doesn't know. What have I just done? Oh, I just turned the whole thing off. Oh, no, I haven't.
Can everyone see that? Okay, with a light.
Oh, that's the laser. Okay. So.
Are you okay with that light on or shall it off?
No, plugging it off. That's a bit right for the sort of intimate event we're about to have.
Okay.
So, woo! You thought you were going to a motorcycle tour. No, anyway, totally lost my thread then. So, this is a talk about this very mountainous region at the far eastern end of the Indian Himalaya, and it's here. It's part of India's remote tribal northeast. And India's northeast. Firstly, who's been to India? Okay, excellent. Has anyone been to the northeast? You know, whereabouts in the northeast have you been?
Actually, Antonia Bollingbrook-Kent. I'll keep quiet.
Totally Right, okay, so no one knows about Arunachal Pradesh. No. So we're going to talk about this state here, Arunachal Pradesh, which is the largest, the least known, and the most tribal of these 7 states that make up India's remote northeast. So this Arunachal Pradesh, which literally translates as land of the dawn-lit mountains, is a place of tribes and tigers, yeti sightings, magic and mystery. It's a place of 7,000-metre mountains, of dense forests, of incredible rainfall, obliterating floods. In fact, it's one of the wettest places in the world. So there's about a metre of rainfall every year here in Oxford. But in Arunachal Pradesh, they have about 12 metres of rain a year. So that's about the height of about 6 door frames. So obviously an ideal place for a motorcycle expedition. And there was a very eccentric explorer called Frank Kingdon Ward who loved tramping around this corner of India searching for orchids in the Victorian and Edwardian era. And he said this: the frivolous might say there are 2 seasons, 8 months wet and 4 months damned wet. It's also a region of highly complex politics, which I'm not going to bore you with too much detail about today, but what you do need to know is that the major problem here is that China never agreed to the border that us Brits drew along the Indo-Tibetan ridge of the Himalayas in 1914. China claimed the whole region as theirs. So this is Arunachal Pradesh, here's Tibet, this is the line us Brits drew in 1914. As far as the Chinese are concerned, this whole area down to the Brahmaputra is Chinese, and it's called South Tibet, and it shows Chinese on Chinese Google Earth and state maps and everything. So this has caused a lot of problems between China and India. The 2 countries went to war in 1962, been squabbling ever since. The last I heard, I think the Indians were accusing the Chinese of sending spy pigeons into the state. And because of this, and because of other complicated reasons to do with the Raj, no foreigners were allowed into Arunachal Pradesh until the late 90s. And travel here today, even for Indians from other states, is still tightly restricted. You're supposed to get you have to get a permit, a very restricted permit. You're supposed to only go for 30 days in a group with a guide. So all these reasons mean that Arunachal Pradesh, this land of the dawn-lit mountains, has remained this bizarrely hidden land, which only Sam and I have been to since 1873. So why did I want to go here to this wet, remote, mountainous, slightly forbidding place? Well, I'm not a climber or an endurance athlete or someone who's interested in first or fastest or furthest. I'm just interested in places that are kind of at the edge of the map, at the edge of our knowledge. I want to go to places to explore, discover, to tell stories, and essentially to write books. And when I first heard about this part of India through a well-travelled Indian friend, I knew I had to go. And I started researching and became even more excited because I realised nothing had been written about this region since the colonial era. All the books I was reading were these sort of dusty Edwardian tomes. And yeah, it really was this blank space in the popular imagination. So As you probably guessed, this is a talk about a motorcycle adventure, and I was going to do this journey partly on foot where there were no roads, but mainly by motorbike. And my style of travel is generally that I go to where I'm going to do the journey and I buy a locally made bike that's cheap, that's easy to fix. And so I flew to the northeast Indian city of Guwahati, which is the neighbouring state of Assam, 2 years ago in February. And I bought this little beauty. It's an Indian-made 150cc, 350 quid bike called a Hero Impulse. And Indians don't really go in for dirt biking very much, and most people ride Enfields, as of course you know. And this was really the closest thing to a kind of dual sport dirt bike that was going to fit the mountainous terrain. Whether it would live up to its name or not, a Hero, I'll have to wait and see. You might have noticed this, my special Indian-style top box. Well, I couldn't possibly travel throughout one of the wettest regions on Earth without a lockable, waterproof box. And I naively assumed I'd fly to Guwahati and I'd find a top box there. But having been in Guwahati for about a week and scoured every possible motorcycle and car shop, there wasn't such thing as a top box. So the day before I went, my friend who was helping me there and we persuaded this local metal fabrication factory to make me this top box. And they bodged together this incredibly inaccurately made top box, which in the end was only fixed on by sort of 2.5 of its 4 bolts, and the paint was still wet as I left. And it rattled like you wouldn't believe. Thank God for gaffer tape. What would we all do without gaffer tape? So my wet top box and motorcycle ready, it was time to go. But no journey in India can start without a temple puja. And my puja blessing happened at a place in Guwahati called the Kamaika Temple of the Mother Goddess, which is a place long associated with human sacrifice of males, I'd like to say, and sort of occult worship. And my puja involved worshipping a sacred stone vagina and being chewed by the holy goat. So after that, what could possibly go wrong? So this is a map of Assam here, Nagaland, Burma, Tibet. Here's Arunachal Pradesh curving around here. And my plan was to follow the Brahmaputra River about 500 miles northeast through Assam. Can you see? Yeah. And then cross into Arunachal Pradesh here and spend 2 months riding up and down this series of steep Himalayan river valleys. And the state is about the same size as Portugal. And each of these river valleys had one road going up and down, and each valley was inhabited by several different tribes. There's about 30 different tribes in this very small area, the most ethnically diverse part of South Asia. So here's Guwahati. I'm not really going to talk about Assam. There's 500 miles, but all I'm going to say is that it was 500 miles of daily near-death experiences at the hands of the apparently crazed drivers of this state, all of whom seemingly wanted to kill me. If you've ridden a motorbike in India, you'll know that you are at the bottom of the road pecking order, way below the elephants and the sacred cows and trucks, buses, etc. So I swore a lot, and I was very happy when I reached the military checkpoint for Arunachal Pradesh here and crossed into the land of the Dorset Mountains, which immediately felt like crossing into a different country. So this eastern section of the state is called the Mishmi Hills, and the Mishmi Hills were renowned during the colonial era for being the most formidable in the whole of India. They were famed for their terrible climate, their extreme inaccessibility, and their inhospitable tribes. So I wasn't quite sure how much things were going to change now. And my first foray into these wild hills took me east along a winding mountainous road towards the border with Tibet, across some very interesting road signs. I love this one. Don't gossip, let him drive. Don't think the Me Too movement has reached the border roads organisation side of my department yet. But soon clouds had enveloped the hills and I was hit by a ferocious dose of early monsoon rains. And my plan had been to ride all the way up this road to the Tibetan border just to see what was there and then come back. But the rain was just too dangerous and the risk of landslides too high. So I was forced to stop in this half-a-horse, very strange, dilapidated town, where the only place to stay was this guest house normally reserved for visiting government employees. And the only other person there was this lonely and definitely sex-starved caretaker who couldn't believe his good luck at a foreigner turning up. He was "You're the first foreigner ever to come here." And he showed me into the VIP room, which had this sort of rickety four-poster bed and a bathroom with 17 taps, none of which worked. And I said to him, "Can I have my room key?" And he went, "No, and keep." And then all evening he kept sort of coming into my room unannounced, because obviously he had the key, and plopping his fat bottom down right next to me and sort of looking at me expectantly. And it was a little bit unnerving, but my instinct told me that he was harmless, he was just lonely and bored. And that night, though, I did spend sleeping with my Leatherman under my pillow, listening for the creak of a turning door handle. But I wouldn't have been able to hear it anyway because the rain was so loud that night. And in the morning, it was looking like this. It was still absolutely pouring with rain. It was too dangerous to go on towards the Tibetan border. And I mean, there are some villages in this area that cut off for 6 months at a time because of landslides. And I certainly wasn't going to stay and play tiddlywinks with a caretaker for another day. So there was only one option, which was to cover myself in every scrap of polythene and Gore-Tex I had and ride back down to the base of the mountains to the nearest main town. And it was a hell of a ride down. I mean, the transformation from the day before was extraordinary. Rivers which yesterday had been sort of benign and turquoise were now boiling brown cauldrons. These waterfalls of water were just pouring off the mountains onto the road. The road had been turned into this just brown river, and the visibility was almost nil. And of course, there was no one else on the road today, not even mad dogs, just an Englishwoman. But then about an hour after I left that strange town, I noticed there was this figure following me in my wing mirror. There was a biker about 20 metres behind. And I could just see, sort of through the gloom, that he was just sticking there at the same distance. And I couldn't really make out this black figure. And I started to get a bit worried, thinking, you know, I was very obvious leaving that town. I'm a foreigner, I'm on a bike, I've obviously got equipment with me. Has that person followed me with an intent to rob me? And then suddenly my bike became lodged in this torrent of mud and water, and this figure was beside me. But he wasn't trying to rob me, he was helping me. He was helping me push my bike upright and push it out of this mud. And I could see then that he was this young, 20-year-old tribal boy, and he was called Anilso. And he spoke a bit of English, and above the sound of the rain we just said, "Shall we ride together?" And we agreed to ride to the base of the mountains together. And of course, he was just like me, slightly afraid of riding in these conditions. He just wanted to stick together for that, you know, human comfort of safety in numbers. And I'm sure all of you have had this sort of experience when you're riding a bike, whether you're alone or with other people, particularly when you're alone. That it's when you have those moments when you really need something to happen, you've run out of petrol, you really need help, that just these sort of angels appear. And he was like that, because we rode down together. It was about another 6 hours to the base of the mountains through this torrential rain and mud. And we came across another big landslide. We helped each other push and carry each other's bikes over this landslide. I couldn't have done it on my own. So thank God he appeared. Now the rain continued for another few days, and I got to the town at the base of the next valley, where again there was one road north. I wanted to ride up to the Tibetan border. But I couldn't get up the road because it was blocked by landslides. And this town was the headquarters, for want of a better word, of this tribe called the Idu Mishmi, who are these tough, mountain-dwelling Tibeto-Burman animists who live in these hills, and no one really knows from where or when they came here because they've got no written script. They probably arrived from China about 800 years ago. But what is certain is that this fearsome warrior race did not impress the British explorers who came to prod around here 100 years ago. They were described as dirty, deceitful, ugly savages who were very averse to die a horrid, painful death. It's a pretty good rule to have. And secondly, they make excellent rice wine called yu. And when I was stuck in this town, having a really hard time drinking you and sitting around fires, hearing stories about the Ido Mishmi, I met this great girl, Tine Mena. And a few years ago, when she was 25, she became the first woman from Northeast India to climb Everest. And she stood on the summit holding up a picture of her family outside their bamboo hut. And she literally grew up in this tiny village in a hut with 16 other siblings, only one other of whom survived. And she climbed Everest. There they are. And Tine and I got on like a house on fire, and she said to me, she spoke a bit of English, and she said, "You're so lucky because tomorrow my clan, which are about 1,000 of the Ido Mishmi, are holding a 5-day, really rare clan gathering up in my ancestral village in the mountains, and it's going to involve 5 days of shamanic chanting and animal sacrifice, all in the name of garnering the good favour of the spirits and bolstering clan ties." She said, "It's really rare, you're so lucky to be here, you've got to go." Slight problem, she said, "I can't go, and there's still landslides blocking the only road north. But," she said, "I'm going to get a message to one of my clans somehow. There's no phone reception or anything, no phones work up there, but somehow I'll get a message that a foreigner's going to come and they need to look after you." And she said, "I think it's too dangerous to take your bike, but I think the landslide will be cleared by tomorrow, so take a shared taxi." These kind of rickety 4x4 taxis ply this whole state. So take a shared taxi and follow the taxi into the mountains for the whole day, and about dusk you'll come to a village. Just get out and wait, and someone will pick you up. Slightly precarious plan. So I did as she said. I left my hero with her, and I took this shared taxi in the morning. We left at 6 a.m. and I was in this taxi with about 10 other Idu, several disgruntled piglets. We wound up into these beautiful mountains, up and away from the plains. Got to this village at dusk. I got out dutifully in my little rucksack and waited. And I sat there for another few hours and no one turned up, and it got dark. And finally, I suppose about 9 o'clock, I heard an engine and these lights came through the darkness. And this truck pulled up beside me, and out got this handsome young Idu tribesman. He was wearing a big Tibetan flat-bladed sword by his waist and wearing this wide-brimmed cane helmet. And he said in faltering English, "Hello, my name's Sadhu. I come to take you to festival." So, some of you might question the wisdom of getting into a truck in the dark mountains of remote India with this handsome young tribesman with his large sword by his waist. But instinct is a great thing when you travel alone, and I already instinctively trusted the Idu. I mean, he wasn't going to kill me because he would have a terrible death because I'm a guest. And I just knew that he was going to be trustworthy, that whatever was going to happen over the next 5 days was going to be a bloody great adventure. And that's what adventure's about, isn't it? That's what these trips are about trusting your instinct, about letting go, about embracing the unknown. So I got into his truck and we drove about another hour through the mountains, and we finally came. I saw these sort of lights sewn into the hills and this tiny village of about 15 bamboo huts. And just before we got there, Sadhu said, "Madam, I am honoured to have you here. The guest is God. But, Madam, I am worried you're not comfortable." And I went into his house and was greeted by this fantastic scene. It was this bamboo hut, there was a fire in the middle, and sitting around the fire was a garrulous crowd of about 20 of Sadhu's friends and relations. And they were all sitting around having bamboo opium bongs and drinking whiskey and drinking yew. And the light of the flames was catching on these bandoliers of bullets and elephant bone knife handles and these big Tibetan swords and cane helmets. And Sadhu was the only one who spoke English, and everyone else just sort of looked at me, very friendly, beckoned me over, gave me things to drink. And as the night wore on, more and more people kept coming in, and Sadhu said they all come to see the Britisher. So basically this was a festival warm-up party. It was great fun. And then at dawn the next morning, Sadhu took me to this hut where the shamans were chanting. So as I said before, it's about 5 days of shamanic chanting and animal sacrifice. And here's a short video of what this looked and sounded like.
But they have lady shamans as well as male.
They do, yes. The one in the middle is the main shaman, he's the chief shaman, he's called Sipa Mello. But these shamans, they're called Igu, play an incredibly important role in animist Idu Mishmi society, in that they are the sort of mediators between the unseen spirit world and the seen human world, and they preside over births and deaths, they heal illnesses, they've been said to perform magical feats to bring people back from the dead, to eat hot coals, to suddenly speak in other dialects. And I spent a few weeks among the Idu Mishmi, and I was very lucky to spend a bit of time with this man in the middle. He was called Sipa Mello, the chief shaman. And he was a man of extraordinary power and beneficence to be in the presence of. The only person I can compare him to is His Holiness the Dalai Lama, this extraordinary strength presence when you're in their company. And sadly, when I was staying with this chief shaman a week later, he said to me that these shamans are dying out because all the young people are moving away to the cities, they want mobile phones, they want jobs, they want the internet, they don't want to live in these villages anymore. And they were very worried about what was going to happen to Idu society without these kind of shamanistic glue. And this was something that I heard all over Arunachal Pradesh, and every tribe I travelled amongst, and that they were all going through this time of exponential change and sort of headlong clash with modernity. So, animal sacrifice. Sorry for the vegetarians amongst you, but I'm not going to show too many terrible images. First to be sacrificed were 6 of these lovely, huge, very docile bovines called mithan, which are endemic to this part of India. Sadly, they normally end up sacrificed, their skulls smoked and hung on walls like this. The next day, a whole load of pigs were sacrificed, the noise of which I shall never forget. And I am actually a vegetarian, and I live in a part of Bristol where hemp milk and vegetarian shoes are the norm. I am not used to starting my Saturday mornings with a grade A bloodbath. And I found it really hard to watch, but nothing was wasted. Every last scrap of that meat was butchered immediately and chopped and divided up and feasted on later that day as a sign of sort of clan unity. And all this was done by men who were stociously drunk on rice wine and like slipping over drunkenly in this like mess of blood and guts. It was a bit like a sort of Idu version of Glastonbury, just rather more blood and gore, probably a bit less acid. And these are just some more photos of some of the people I met there. This is again the chief shaman, Sipa Mello, with this leopard's jawbone. And some lovely ladies who took me into their collective wing. And I gained very deep affection for the Idu Mishmi. I'm still in touch with quite a lot of Idu friends by the very modern methods of WhatsApp. And I was really sad to leave them, but that is the nature of travel. We do these trips, we meet remarkable people, and we have to move on. And from Idu Mishmi territory, I picked up my hero, my poor neglected hero, and rode west across the state. Top box still on, more gaffer tape. It was rattling unbelievably by now. But finally I got to the next valley over called the Upper Siang Valley, where a completely different land and people awaited me. And this was what was so amazing about travelling in Arunachal Pradesh, because of all the different tribes. Every valley I went to felt like I'd gone to a completely different universe, different people, different languages, different beliefs, different religions. So, all of you have heard of the legend of Shangri-La, I'm sure, this notion that somewhere deep in the Himalayas is this magical valley where everyone skips around merrily and lives to a great age. Well, Buddhists believe that in these wild mountains on the Indo-Tibetan border is just such a place. It's called Pemako. So this is where I've gone up with the Idu, and then this is the Siang Valley, and Pemako is here. And Buddhists believe that this Pemako is a magical land where rivers flow with enchanted water, where trees grow edible bark, where magical herbs hold the key to eternal bliss, and where old people suddenly become young again. But the 8th century tantric sorcerer who supposedly created this land didn't want any old Tom, Dick or Harry getting there, so he made it really hard to get to. So there was one 18th century Tibetan pilgrim who, trying to get to this promised land, he said, "In Pemmican there was a constant menace from poisonous snakes, leeches, flies, fanged animals, wildmen and witches. Those without courage will have difficulty getting through unscathed." So obviously, I had to try and reach Pemmican and see if there really was this hidden Shangri-La deep in these mountains. There were no roads here, so again I had to leave my hero. Sorry that you are going to hear more about biking, but there are elements of this journey where I'm on foot. I had to leave my bike for another couple of weeks because there were just no roads through this valley. And because it was right on the very sensitive Indo-Tibetan border, which is heavily militarised on the Chinese side, I'd have to have a guide. So I tracked down this man, Dorje, who was a Tibetan camper Lama, and a few days later we set off. Him, myself, his son, and a couple of reporters from another tribe. I felt rather like a Victorian explorer setting off into this valley for 2 weeks with all the supplies we needed, rice and tea bags, etc., because there was no shops, no Wi-Fi, no hotels, nothing. We were just going to be walking and staying with families. And we started by crossing this very vertigo-inducing bridge. That explorer, Frank Kingdom Ward, I mentioned, he was terrified of snakes and heights, and I can't imagine how he survived travelling in this region, because there's a lot of bridges like this and there's a lot of very dangerous snakes. So we then carried on walking for about a week through these thickly forested mountains. We walked about 20 miles a day up and down these mountains, occasionally passing through Tibetan villages like this. All the people who lived here being descendants of pilgrims who crossed the mountains in search of this magical land. It was terrible weather, as predicted. Obviously the gods were making it hard for me to reach this place. It rained every day. It was muddy, it was misty, it was wet. It made it pretty hard going. And as you can see, I've got a very fetching purple brolly and some £2 wellies I bought in a local market. And it really was such an isolated region, completely cut off from the world by its savage geography. And as I mentioned, there's no hotels or homestays or Airbnb, obviously, or anything. So at night we would just stay with local families and we'd sit around the fire with these multi-generational families drinking the dreaded Tibetan salted butter tea. Anyone had the misfortune to drink the? Yeah, never gets better. And rather less dreaded chang. And I would hear all these really extraordinary stories about this place, Pemmican, about reincarnated lamas, I mean Buddhist holy men, not the Andean ungulate, about meditating goats, about monks whose bodies had dissolved into rainbows after their deaths, and about people who had eaten magical grasses and suddenly been able to fly. And it really did feel like I'd sort of stepped into this parallel universe. Now after a week, we reached this village called Tashigon, which was where my guide Dorje had been born. And Tashigon means cheerful mountain. And it really was cheerful mountain because the sun came out. And for the first time, I could see this incredible scenery we'd be walking through, this panorama of forested mountains and beyond the white wall of Tibet. And by, again, incredible luck, I had a lot of luck on this journey. The next day, the village were holding an all-day puja. It sounded like this. Need more sound on that, really. But they did that all day, and we sat there and blew conches and threw offerings and played pipes and chanted and played drums. And it was really strange because at about 4 p.m. it had been clear skies all day, beautiful sunshine. Suddenly, as this puja was reaching its climax, this incredible storm came out of nowhere and whipped round the temple as if it was going to pull the roof off. And then 10 minutes later just went and the skies were blue again. And Dorje, who was a very spiritual man, said, "This is good, this means the gods have heard our puja." So In Pimlico, I spent about 2 weeks there, and I didn't sadly become 20 again, or find any magical grasses that made me fly, or drink any enchanted water, I don't think. But something I noticed there has really stuck with me since this journey, and that is the fact that the people who live in this area have a tough life. There's no schools, there's no medical help, there's no road, although the road is just being built at the moment. They live amongst tigers and bears, they have to grow their own food, they have extreme weather. But people there really struck me as being incredibly happy. There was this deep sense of lightheartedness, of cheerfulness, of mutual help. And they might not have all had the trappings of, well, none of them had the trappings of what we would call wealthy phones and computers and cars, but they had enough food, they lived with the natural rotation of night and day and seasons, and they had this very strong sense of community and also this very strong faith. And I couldn't help comparing it with our own Western lifestyles, that we have this constant drip feed of depressing news and Instagram and Snapchat, and we're sitting at computers all the time and we're getting fatter and more depressed, and somehow we need to marry the two somehow and learn from this tribal way of life. And I did genuinely meet some people there who were 60, who looked 30. It was very strange. So I'm coming to the end of my journey now. I've picked up my hero again. And the last, it was April, I'd been on the road about 2 months, and I just had one last place to get to. It was called Tawang, and it was a former Tibetan town right in the corner of the state on the border of Bhutan and Tibet. There was only one road connecting Tawang with the rest of India, and this road crossed at its highest point, a 4,000-metre pass, called the Sela Pass. This isn't the pass, this is halfway up the pass. Now, my hero had really lived up to its name. I mean, compared, I don't know if any of you are familiar with my last journey on a Honda Cub down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, but my supposedly indestructible Honda Cub needed 4 new engines in that journey. Whereas my 350 quid Hero Impulse needed nothing doing to it. I think I spent about 2 quid getting it serviced. It was an amazing bike, but it didn't like altitude, and it really struggled with 2,000 metres. Now I had to get it up over 4,000 metres. So I got up to a bit above here, which is about 2,000 metres, and stopped for the night, and then with the help of a local mechanic did some bodging on the carburettor, which you're all probably way more better at mechanics than I am, but essentially just shoved some electrical wires in the carburettor to reduce the fuel flow, took out the air filter to improve the airflow, and the next day managed to coax it up over this 4,175 metre pass, literally sort of bunny hopping all the way. I was going, come on hero, come on, we've got to do it! And then we got to the top, which is pretty weird because there was snow on the ground, and there were sort of yaks and army trucks. And then we dropped down here through this beautiful valley up again to Tawang. And this is a very famous Tawang monastery, the second biggest monastery in the world after Lhasa's Potala. This is Bhutan, and that just behind there is Tibet, so it's right in the corner of India. Now I spent 5 cold days in Tawang, which again was completely different to anywhere else I'd been in. The tribe here were called the Monpa. And the highlight of my time there was staying in this Monpa nunnery. And I was looked after by these 2 nuns, Tenzin, who was 11 and had been given to the nunnery by her family when she was 8, and Purpa, who'd been there since she was 8 as well. Now there's several things you'd probably expect to do in a nunnery. You'd expect to pray and get up early. You would not expect for the nuns to get you pissed. Just what happened? So it was 3,500 metres above sea level, it was pretty cold, and like everyone else I'd met on this journey, these nuns were just so hospitable and so eager that I was comfortable. And they kept saying to me, you know, you're a long way from home and it's very cold and we're at altitude. This was through a translator because they didn't speak any English. You must drink this hot chang laced with melted yak butter. And they kept pushing this silver, we were having to heave over this silver pot of this chang. Wouldn't take no for an answer. I'm sure you've all been at altitude probably and drunk a bit at altitude, and it really hits you a lot harder. I was literally tucked into bed, sort of crying with happiness by two nuns. Less happy was I at getting up at 3 o'clock for morning prayers, and I can tell you that getting up at 3 a.m. with a hangover at 3,500 metres altitude is not something I would recommend. But then a few days later, I was crossing back over the Sela Pass and heading back down towards the plains of Assam. And it was so weird because up on the Sela Pass it was -5, there was snow on the ground, there was even a bit of snow falling as I went down. And then when I got down to Assam and towards Guwahati, where I began the journey, it was 37 degrees and it was approaching the Indian monsoon. And I'm sure you've all had these emotions at the end of a journey. Towards the end of a journey, your mood fluctuates for as much as this weather. You have that really heady mix of emotions that sort of you're happy for the journey to end because thank God you're still alive, but you're also really sad that it's going to be over, that adventure's coming to an end, and you think back about all the people you've met, all the stories you've heard, the laughter you've shared. You just don't want it to finish. And this journey had been everything I wanted it to be, and so much more. And like all these journeys, it had reminded me of what a fantastic place the world is, how people are so much kinder than the media would have us believe. And of course there's that famous quote by Mark Twain, which is that travel is fatal to bigotry, prejudice and narrow-mindedness, which travelling always shows you. But after 2.5 months on the road, I got back to Guwahati and I said goodbye to my faithful hero, who is now in semi-retirement in Guwahati. Got ridden by Kate Humble apparently, poor thing, for some recent TV programme. And now I'm going to show you a 3-minute video.
It's 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm in the middle of Namdapha National Park, which is dense jungle. God knows what's lurking and prowling and purring and slithering in that dark green mass. I decided this trip that I would do the sort of vulnerable travel thing. I would just trust in humanity and the universe that it was going to be okay. Just watched 6 Smithmans being sacrificed. I'm vegetarian. Can't really deal with animal sacrifice first thing in the morning.
Happy Holi! What do you reckon? Yeah, that's you. That's you, there.
We are nearly at the site of where an American C-46 crashed. February 1945. Down here there's bits of parachute, so obviously the men didn't have time to get out. I made it to the Sela Pass! Yes! Look! There it is! 4,175 metres. Woohoo! These things are good for you, right? These things that really test you. That's why we do adventures. That's why we plunge into the unknown, we take the risks, because every time you overcome something like this, you overcome your fears, you face your fears and you overcome them, then you realise you're a little bit stronger than you thought you were. So, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right?
Thank you very much. great. And also, I've got some of my books to sell, so if anyone would like one, I should be doing signed copies afterwards. I'm not doing the whole all-the-tent thing because I didn't get my shit together enough. So yeah, if you want a book, then talk to me afterwards. But before that, any more questions?
When you were going up and down those parallel valleys, meeting the different tribes, when you got to the second tribe, were they aware that you were coming through the jungle drums, or did they not? Were you new to them? Did the first tribe let the second tribe know you were on the way?
So the question was basically when I was travelling between the valleys and different tribes, when I got to one tribe, had the tribe before would let them know that I was coming.
Yeah.
No, because
That density, that's separate.
because of, I mean, I've heard that there's been an incredible amount of road building in the 2 years since I was there, and that things have already really changed because mainly for military reasons, the Indians are really busy building roads to try and catch up with the Chinese on the other side of the border. But then, you had to go down into Assam basically to get over to the next valley to go up again, and so generally there was often very little contact between the tribes, and the tribes lived very much within their tribes. And then lots of places I was going, there was absolutely no phone signals. So when I was in Pimlico for 2 weeks, no phone signal, no phones, no internet, I didn't have a sat phone or anything. I just called my boyfriend and said, I'm not going to hear from you for a few weeks. So people are just totally...
I was just interested in that young girl could get contact past the landslide up to where the party was going to be.
I don't. So I think someone from the town where we were was obviously going to the festival. She said to take the message up to it. I meant to know I never knew because they spoke such little English. Really, I was never able to find out. I just spy pigeon. Spy pigeon. I just had total faith that if I did as she said and I waited in that town, someone would turn up.
Yeah.
And if they didn't, then something else would happen.
You said that normally you only get visas there for 30 days and things like that. How did you manage to swing that one?
So the question was, how did I manage to swing the longer permit? So I heard about Arunachal Pradesh through my other job as a TV producer, and I produced a series in India before, and our kind of translator on that series was the guy who first introduced me to this whole region. And he's a bit of he's a fixer basically, and he knows the northeast really well. And it took 2 years of basically wangling for me to get a longer permit and for me to being able to travel alone. And what happens is when you submit your permit to the authorities, you have to have more than 2 names on the permit. And so they put this other name on it. It was John someone, and I never got to the bottom of this. But every time I got to a military checkpoint in Arunachal Pradesh, they'd look at my papers, they'd say, "Where's John?" And I'd be like, he's coming, or and sometimes literally they'd be like looking in bushes, like, where's John? But John was fictitious. But so it was down to this guy basically, and it took just a long time to get it sorted. Anyone else? No?
A non-motorbike related question. These shamanic societies, have you a clue how they work? Can you become a shaman, or are you born to be a shaman? Are there job openings for shamans?
How do you become a shaman? Very good question. So you can't generally choose to become a shaman in this society anyway. You have a sort of calling. So this shaman, Stephen Mello, his mother had a dream before he was born, which is often the way, a sort of magical dream that her unborn child would become a shaman. But what happens, this is what I heard anyway, is that either someone will suddenly start having strange dreams and visions, or they will suddenly be able to talk in some dialect. So it kind of comes upon you, or your mother will have a dream about it. So generally you can't sort of say, I'm going to become a shaman. I guess it's a bit like being a clairvoyant or something. Either you've got that sort of sixth sense and that. Anyway, he was an amazing man. Thank you very much. Oh, did you want to ask something?
I got the impression maybe you've done a few others trips like this.
Yeah, I mean my first trip was actually with a friend, very different, that we drove tuk-tuk from Bangkok to England. That was 12 years ago. And then I did a solo journey down the Ho Chi Minh Trail through Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and then this, and then I've done lots of other travels but with other people. So actually, which leads me, I'm just going to say one more point. While you're all here, is that my boyfriend, who's also my business partner, and I have a company called Silk Road Adventures, and we take people on motorbike and walking trips all over the world. There's actually a few lovely people in the audience who travelled with us to Tajikistan and Bolivia and Palestine. And we've also run trips with Overland. We've featured in Overland magazine quite a lot. And next March we are launching a really exciting new trip. We're going to be the first people ever to run a motorcycle trip in Jordan, because motorcycling has been illegal for foreigners until now. So we're running 2 back-to-back trips in March. There's some talk of one of them being partnership with Overland. So if anyone is interested in that, then come and talk to me afterwards. And I have some business cards in my pocket. So Silk Road Adventures. I think we're in the current issue of Overland actually. In fact, I think Marley, my boyfriend, has written an article about Jordan in the current Overland. So if you want to be the very first person ever, foreigner, to ride a motorbike in Jordan, then come this March. And God, I'm just flogging things left, right and centre. If you don't want that, then you can buy my book. If you go with that, go and enjoy the night. Thank you very much for listening.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm good.